do well. So the first was recognizing that the API was the thing. We really focused on having a clean API for being able to access Kubernetes. And that API was something that would be accessible to sort of a engineer playing a DevOps role, similar to the way that people use public cloud. I learned a lot building the API for Compute Engine, taking some of those lessons, applying that to Kubernetes, and really recognizing that providing that clean interface and a great experience for folks using the cluster, not necessarily adminning the cluster, was really front and center. And I would contrast that to something like, say, Mesos, which was one of the competitors at the time. It had a very sophisticated scheduling engine at the time, but the end user interface was actually intermediated through these sort of frameworks that were running on top of it. And those have a sort of a common API across the different types of workloads that you would run on Mesos. And I think that created a lot of friction there. I think the other thing that we did with Kubernetes that worked well is we recognized from the get-go that extending something like Docker to multiple machines had to be different from just pretending that it was one big machine. And so one thing, aspect of that was introducing the concept of a pod. With Docker, each container sort of sat on its own. With Kubernetes, we wanted to capture a set of containers that were tightly coupled that worked well together along with other resources, whether it be persistent volumes, essentially storage, or eventually GPU resources. Those things actually got, described as a unit, and then that was the unit that got scheduled. Whereas I think if you just try to sort of pretend like it's one big machine, then you might have two containers that need to communicate really closely, maybe share resources on machine, and you would schedule those things to different machines. And so having that concept of a pod was a really critical piece of the puzzle, I think, for making Kubernetes work well as a sort of taking containerization to the clusters. And then the third thing I would say is community. I think, it was very intentional from the get-go that we wanted Kubernetes to be more than just a Google project. And I think that, there's this realization that, hey, there's a lot of smart people inside of a company like Google, but there's even more smart people outside of a company like Google. And if you can start harnessing that, you can really do amazing things.